Hey, this is Tim with the Vintage Airstream podcast, back in my 1960 Airstream Ambassador. Today I'm going to be working on modifying my Starlink. I have a version 2 Starlink. This is the router that comes with the Starlink, and this takes 110 to operate the Starlink. Well, now that I have my new battery, I decided to go ahead and convert my Starlink to operate on 12 volts. So I'm going to go from this to this. So I'll show you what I do. In case you're not familiar with the original, this is the second Starlink, the version 2. The way it operates is it comes with the dish and a cable that connects in between and the router. The router is what powers the dish by plugging it into 110. So in your trailer, you're going to need an inverter to do that. Normally, this is the kind of end, proprietary end that comes on the dish cable, and it goes in the bottom of the router. I guess it goes this way. Okay, and that's what powers. So this powers the actual dish with 48 volts going over this proprietary connector. Now I had modified mine already, so I could use my external RJ45 jack that I already had. So to be able to just keep using it like normal, I went ahead and put an end on this. This is a shielded connector, and I wired it with the standard, I think it's TA568B, which luckily is what the next part requires. So in order to do this, you're going to need a power supply that will replace the power supply that's normally fed through that. And like I said, it requires 48 volts. So this is a DC to DC converter. It takes 12 volts in and it gives you that 45 volts out. Now I got a 5 amp one, so it's 48 volts at 5 amps, just because online that's what I was seeing that works the best. Because the dish, although it may run at a lower power, it also has a snow melt, so it has a heater. So if it gets snow, it will turn on that heater, which loses a lot of power. Even if you don't have snow, you don't want to be in a situation where it could turn it on and blow out your power supply or blow a fuse or something. So in addition to the power supply, to replace this, you're going to need a way to inject that power into the dish. So they have these PoE injectors. I'll link this one below. Now this is just the first one I found when I was looking online. They have others. I see that this works for a good number of people. And, the others like a different brand, so I'll link both. But basically, you take the output power from this. You're going to have 12 volts coming into this. You have 48 volts coming out. That 48 volts will power this injector, this PoE injector. And then the dish will plug into one of them that has the power. And then the other jack on here will either go to your computer if you just want to plug your computer in, or if you want to have Wi-Fi, then you have to plug it into a 12-volt router. Now for me, I didn't have to buy a 12-volt router because, again, like I mentioned before, I already had experience with the Wi-Fi Ranger system, which is still kind of nice, what the kinds of things that this can do. Maybe that'll be another video. I actually have videos on my channel for that. But I'll be able to plug, this is a 12 volt, this operates off 12 volts. So I'll be able to plug the output of the PoE injector into this Wi-Fi Ranger router. Actually, I have a newer one that I'm going to use. And then this will create the Wi-Fi for the trailer. And then you can also plug in a computer or whatever else you need, just like normal. So that's the idea. That's what I'm going to do. And we'll see how it goes. So this is my 1960 Airstream Ambassador. And in a different episode, which I'll link, I modified the Starlink to be able to mount it outside. This is the original TV antenna mast from 1960. It's pretty cool because it has this gearbox here, and there's a a dial inside that you could rotate that points north, east, south, and west, so you could actually rotate the TV antenna. But I repurposed it for the Starlink. Now I don't leave the dish up there when I'm traveling. I just hobble on up there and plug it into the pipe adapter. What I did to modify it then is I already had this uh, RJ45 jack, weatherproof RJ45 jack on my trailer when I was working with a Wi-Fi Ranger system. And so I just went ahead and modified it, and I put a weatherproof RJ45 jack, and I cut the Starlink cable and put a connector on it and put the weatherproof jack so I can attach it when I want to. And if I need to, I also have the cable that I cut out because they're about 150-foot cable. And if I need to mount if I'm parked in the trees and I want to put the dish further away because I'm in underneath the trees or something, I can just put that cable, attach it to those connectors, and put the dish out further using the original tripod. So I'm just going to do something simple layout like this. This is the power supply. So this will take the 12 volts in on the black and red from my fuse box. And then the 48 volts will come out of the power supply and it will go into the PoE injector. It also has mounting holes, so that's nice. Both pieces have mounting holes. And then maybe you could read that if we get close enough. So this one says PoE, that's power over Ethernet. That will go to the cable that's running up to the dish. And then this LAN, that'll go to the cable running to my Wi-Fi Ranger router. So you probably won't have one of those, but you can get 12 volt USB powered routers on Amazon, and then you can get circuit lighter adapters for a USB power and be able to power it no problem. Because if you remember, this is going to bypass the original Starlink router. Okay, here we go. About ready to power it up. I put that board in. 48 volt power supply, and it comes with these quick connect, which is really nice. So they say to use big wire, so I had some 12 gauge to feed the power supply, and this is the 48 volt output, goes in the bottom. This is earth ground. And this is my cable coming from the Starlink, and this, according to the instructions for this has to be wired when you cut the cable for the Starlink to 568B, which is luckily what I chose from before. So I should just be able to plug it in, and this will provide 48 volts over the PoE. So this one has the power, and then this one goes to the router with no power. So I don't have a fuse in for that yet, so I'm going to plug this in. So this goes to the Starlink dish, and then this one continues around the trailer up into that cabinet to the router, which is the Wi-Fi Ranger 12 volt router. So I'm going to plug that in here. So this wouldn't have power on it. Okay, then my bed will go back over. All right, so here's the fuse. They also said something about using like a 20 or 30 amp, so I happen to have a 30 amp fuse. So I'm going to plug it in and then run out and see if the dish wakes up and starts moving around. Well, here we are a couple days later because it didn't work. I ran outside after I powered up the dish through the PoE to see the dish move, and it wasn't moving. And so after some checking, I found out there was no power coming out of the first PoE box that I bought. I won't even bother telling you which brand it is because I'm going to link the replacement. So doing some more searching, this one seems to be the preferred one, the Yaoxing. So I'll post a link below. But anyway, let's hook this one up and see how it goes. Here's how I figured out I didn't have any power coming out of that first injector. I used this breakout. They call it a banjo, I think. Anyway, I hooked it back up to the Starlink, the regular router that provides the power. And you can see there, it's 48 volts. So between pins 1 and 8, you should have 48 volts. And I had nothing. So here's the new injector, and it comes with this pin out. How you got to cable the Starlink cable. So the original cable that comes with it, you're going to have to cut. And then you have to pin it out using 568B, which is what I already did. Again, I cut mine before because I had the RJ45 jack on the outside of my trailer when I was playing around with the Wi-Fi Ranger stuff. So it was no big deal for me to go ahead and use it. So luckily I already did 568B. And the reason is because the power they show here comes over 1 and 8. With gig Ethernet, it actually rides on the same pairs as the data. So the plus comes on 1, 2, 3, and 6, and the negative 48 volts comes on 4, 5, 7, and 8. So I just go between 1 and 8 just for testing purposes. So luckily my cables were already terminated properly. Now they do make an interface, another one you can buy if you scan that QR code. I think they pointed out where you don't have to cut the cable. You can put the OEM end of the Starlink cable into that, and then it would give you a Ethernet jack out. So again, there's the RJ45 that's going to power the dishy, and then this is the LAN side. This will go to your provided router. Okay, there's the setup. I still need to put a power switch on it so I can turn it off. I just have it connected to the fuse box over here right now. I don't have a fuse in it yet. And I got my iPad set up so we can watch it connect. And then outside the trailer, up there at the top, is the Starlink. It's in the standby mode, the storage mode. Okay. I'm going to try and put the fuse in while I'm recording. Again, I'm going to put a switch on here so I can turn it on and off. But you should see that light on the PoE light up, which the other one didn't even have. So that's pretty cool. So here's the 12 to 48 volt power supply, PoE, 48 volts, and then this one goes to my router. So let's run out here. See if this thing boots up, and there it goes. Woohoo! On 12 volts. Yes. So it's just going to come back down. It doesn't need to spin around because I've already had it on. It should know the alignment here. Let it do its thing. It's probably scanning. Now let's come and look at. There you go. It's connected. Now I do have the RV plan, so I have my service pause, so I'm not being charged. But what's interesting is you don't see the router, because when you're connected to the router, the regular router, you'll see the picture of the router here, and then the light beam going over and going up. So now you don't see the router. Let me flip the camera around. We'll just do a little walk around here. So one thing to keep in mind when you do the switch, normally to the 12 volts using your own router, normally you're going to connect to the Starlink router. That's the one that comes with the Starlink. But once you do the 12 volts, you're not using the Starlink anymore, the router. You're going to use your own 12 volt router. then that's what you're going to connect to get to Starlink. So connect to that, and then I just powered it up, so it takes a minute to boot up. So there it goes. I found it. See, it's booting. So yeah, I just want to point that out. Once you make the switch to 12 volts, output of the PoE is going to your own router. You're not using the Starlink router anymore. Here's the final install with the 48 volt converter and the PoE injector. So again, the whole reason to do this is to save the power that you would normally have to use up running an inverter the whole time, so you can power the system. So with the meter here, I'm showing it only draws 3.8 amps from the battery to power Starlink. So it saves you from boondocking and having to run an inverter. So that was the reason to do it. Not that I boondock or whatever, but if I ever wanted to, um, I could just, I'm going to hook up a switch, like I said, and leave it connected on a 12 volt setup. And that way I can just click it on, and it's tied into the trailer's router. That way everybody can just connect to the Wi-Fi in the trailer, and then the trailer can select, am I going to use Starlink internet? Am I going to use a campground internet? On the Wi-Fi, and then redistribute it. Well, anyway, I know I was geeking out a little too much here, but again, hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you down the road.